Promise? No. Did everybody get the M&Ms? Yeah. Oh, and make sure everybody signs in too. I don't care about the evaluation. Did anybody get it? Everybody get the M&Ms? The reason we picked the M&Ms is because they're all rounded. They all have the same filling, but they're all different color from outside. So there's a purpose of that. This lecture is just one portion of the program, of the initiative that we're trying to put in place in our home that we call Hospice of Marion County. I've been here for 11 plus years and in town for more than 14 years. In the United States for more than 25 years now. So I have been working with a lot of people and a lot of kind of people. In every group, there's what we talk about a dynamic. It's in the sense that there are relationships, there are structures of that relationships, and we relate to each other in different ways. Most of the time when we come into any groups, we're going to develop a structure, a language, rules, and we're going to define ourselves within that group, but we're going to bring our own ideas to them. And the problem when there are clashes between groups, so the HIM group versus the admission group, the HF group versus the nurses group, or the TA groups versus the financial group, is because we're going to be talking different languages. So the Pure diet that Mike works is an order, so I had to go to HIM, and if that order is not there, even though Mike is doing it there, it's still causing a problem somewhere. When the TA gets a call from finances and say, I don't have the patient's insurance information because this and that, if we don't understand that that is important to that group, we may say, they need a piece of paper, why bother me, I'm busy here. So if we don't understand each other at all levels, we may not be able to work this work that is very complicated. I have never been in a place where so many pieces have to fall in place for our patients to die in peace. And if we remember our mission and our vision, this is all we're doing in here. I'm not coming here to show my red shoes. I'm not coming here to talk about diet or to eat potato chips that my doctor told me not to do. I'm here to help with end-of-life care of the patients of Hospice of Marion County in an excellent way. So that's all we need to be caring about. While we're doing that, we bring our ideas. So Deb thinks that potato chips are very good for 3 p.m. snack, and I love that. But as a doctor, that's my idea, I recommend not to do that because it has a lot of sodium. Actually, I recommend that to my patient when they're dying with sodium is low because it has so much sodium that instead of giving a pill, I say, no, take a canned soup and a bag of potato chips, your sodium will shoot up immediately. So I don't have to add another pill. But this is what we do. This is who we are, and this is what I bring around. If I'm in the hospital at 3 p.m. and haven't had any lunch, I will grab that bag of potato chips because there's no other option, okay? So when we come into any group, we're going to bring our ideas and who we are, who we have been, and now we're going to have to be part of that group. And we're going to be talking about definitions. So in any group, there is a culture. If you belong to the volleyball group, there's a volleyball culture. But if you play baseball, there's a completely different slang. Your uniform is different. Your rules are different. Your core is different. So each one of them going to be different. But if you ask me, I could not make a decision whether volleyball or baseball is better because I enjoy them both. But somebody can say, you know, they're different. Now, if you ask me about American football, the only thing I know about that is the intermission, because they're still calling intermission show in the Super Bowl. That's all I know about that thing that you call football, that I call American football, because there's some more kind of footballs out there. But still, volleyball and baseball are better. That doesn't mean that I don't have to, you know, if I don't like it, doesn't mean that this is better than the other. It just means that I don't like it. And that's what happens when two cultures or two groups or more than one get together. We talk about culture diversity. We talk about how we're going to include that Because if Andy comes to my office to talk to me about the Super Bowl, the only thing I'm going to tell him is Maroon 5 did it again. That's all I know about it. He can tell me the stats of that. There was the lowest point score in the whole history, the Patriots and the other dudes, and the Rams, right? The Rams were there, and we're waiting for points, and never happened. That much I know. But I can also be biased about it, so we're going to talk about cultural bias and how we're going to get out of the bias. Because the fact that he comes to my office to talk about football, the one that he knows, doesn't mean that I had to be, oh, soccer is much better. You should watch the World Cup next time it comes. Because he won't come back to my office when I call him to help me with my numbers. So when we talk about culture, it's anything that we have done as human beings to modify our environment. A concept that I learned when I was in third grade. In third grade, we are asked to draw, make a drawing. This is nature, this is culture, what is human-made. So anything that we do, or food, or computers, or constructions, all of those is part of our culture. Most basic part of culture that we do, and what makes us most basically different from the animals or the nature out there, is our language. And that's why we don't have one single language. One is no better than the other. The fact that I have an accent doesn't mean that I cannot talk to you in 4 different languages, and I do have them there. So language is the most basic part of that culture we all carry around. We talk about the American English versus the British English. And if we stay in America long enough, then we talk about the Southern accent versus the Northern accent. People that are coming from the West, people that are coming from the East, people that have come from the Midwest. So even though we're talking sort of kind of same language, we all have brought into that cultural basic item the intrinsic information that we have learned from the little ones. We all share attitudes, values, goals, and practices. That's why we are Hospice American County, because we're all here trying to do exactly the same thing, based on our vision and in our mission. But we had to follow rules, and that's why we have a whole department just making sure that we follow the rules that are established for us. Our culture is a tool. So if you are part of a group and you are walking into a place, you're going to gravitate to somebody else that looks like you, that behaves like you, that is eating the same food as you, or doing things like you, that you identified with, because it's safe. Going to a different place is kind of anxiety-provoking. You may be looking for that, because some people get a rush out of that. But in general, we try to gravitate to those of us that look like each other, or we identify with each other. It provides us meaning. So when people ask me, say, how can somebody be working for hospice? There are people that dead or dying all day long. Say, well, when we hire somebody to come to work with us, we know in 3 weeks if that person going to stay here or going to go. Because it takes somebody different like us to do this every day and survive and enjoy it and do it better every single time that we try. Not everybody can do that, okay? I could not be in the emergency room all the time. I love being there, but not all the time, because that will be too much for me and too much of too much. So we use the framework we're coming from to assess and identify every single group that we move into. So if I move the TA from Bradley House to our main office here, the first thing you're going to say is look around and say, who am I going to be sharing lunch with? So you're going to start checking that, here we do have a break room, and you start gravitating to the coffee, and they can start learning that it's completely different in Bradley House. We wait until Mike starts cooking, and we'll go for lunch. So that's how, in the same group, we're going to be behaving differently. These structures are established based on social, moral, and legal integrates. So I cannot be eating on my desk continuously, mostly if something smells like big onions or dead fish, because my neighbors won't appreciate that. So I have to respect that, because it's socially inappropriate for me to be eating the anchovies that I love so much. So when we are cultural diverse, we have to learn that there are rules and regulations of interaction. So the fact that we're coming from two different frames or more than that, it doesn't mean that we're going to be clashing with each other. It just means that we're going to enrich each other, and we're going to keep growing that way. And when we talk about diversity, we can talk about, they have many facets on that. One of them is race. We talk about race being different than ethnicity, and we will define that. We talk about gender or gender identity. We have more options now than we had 20, 30 years ago. We talk about age. I was reviewing a chart the other day, and the chart says advanced age as a diagnosis to be admitted to the hospital. That person was 82 years old. The chart was 20 years old. So what it was advanced age 20 years ago, now is a spring chicken for us here in Hospice of Marion County, okay? So age is one of those. My husband still believes that millennials are spoiled rats, and we're getting into this argument with my daughter because A, she's not millennial, 2, she's not a spoiled rat because I have been in charge of that. There's a religious affiliation. We talk about that, and we make that part of our assessment to our patients because based on our religion framework, we're going to see things differently. We are going to appreciate things differently, and we're going to have a different frame to explain what happened to us and to others. Doesn't mean that one religion is better than the other. It just means that they are differently. And we can learn. I have learned a lot. Where I'm coming from, there were no other options but Catholic. But because we're in the oil compounds, there was a group of Baptist people in there. My grandfather, a gazillion years ago, keeps talking and say, I don't understand these people. They are happy when somebody died. Well, in his mind, singing for us, singing is for a party. So we don't go to any funeral or any memorial singing. There's no music. If you ever been in a Catholic mass in the old times, it was, if they had music, it was kind of somber music, fall asleep. So if you have ever gone to a Baptist church, the music, the prayers are very loud, are very joyful. Even if you're talking about something very sad, you are making a lot of song and music. So my grandfather won't understand what they were saying because it was only in English, but he knew they were having a party out there after somebody died. So in his framework, he couldn't understand that. Now I can, and sort of kind of enjoy that party better than my party. Sexual orientation has come in through changes. And that doesn't mean that my sexual orientation is better than yours. It just means it's different. And we are going to continue to change. You know, we have several letters out there, but we're going to continue to add letters to that because that's how the world goes. And when we talk about educational level, I just got a Facebook post of one of my classmates from neurology, from the neurology residency. So she's a doctor, and actually she's a very smart woman. She got all her medical school paid at University of Miami via scholarships. And we used to tease her in Miami because her picture was on a big billboard in I-95 in Miami when we were in residency. That's how strong she is as a woman, that they use her as an example to the community because she pulled herself out. So she's posting today on Facebook that people should be proud of who we are, no matter who you are, because a degree from CTE is as needed in our society like any other degree. So she was making that point. She continues to work in education out there. So our educational level may make us different, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be superior to my patients because I have a medical degree. They don't. I had to go to their educational level to explain to them what's happening to them so they can understand how they're going to die and how I'm going to be able to do my job. So we can define anybody based on these characteristics, this framework, this background, and this is who we are, and this is what makes us. So Dr. Lozada appears to be white to most of the people. If I'm in my country of origin, which is Venezuela, I am extremely white. If I come here, I kind of blend some in the middle white shade. So I'm not the whitest of all the whites, but I'm not the darkest of all the darkest. I just right there. okay? My ethnicity, and it will be until the day I die, even though by now I've been here more than half of my lifetime than what I was there, is still Hispanic. Because I have learned how to eat hot dogs, hamburgers, and macaroni and cheese. But when I feel sick, I will go and eat arepas with butter. And some of you have tried those with me. So now I have sort of kind of know where to go, because if I go down there, I have an accent in there. And if I stay here, I have an accent in here. So now I have an accent everywhere I go. I still define myself as female, bound to change any time with no warning. I don't know. Things change in life. That's the only constant we have, but that's what I have so far. I am still 81 until December this year, and I am mostly Catholic. So if you ask the Catholic group, I am not that Catholic for them, because I don't follow rules very well. I don't know if you have noticed that. But I don't like following rules too much, because I usually am critique about those. So I question them. And I say, if I like them, I follow them. If I agree with them, I follow them. So in the group, the cultural group of Catholicism, I will be given probably a C-. But still, that will be the only one that I know about, and that will be the one that I identify myself with the most. Again, I'm still heterosexual, so that's where I'm so far, and it may be bound to change any time, but we will accept that as it comes. And I have sort of more of a college degree or something like that, or more than that, I don't know. I did go to college somehow. Now, we talk about Marin County. We identify this population. We're going to have characteristics of this population. Look at this. And when we talk about any company that works for this county, we're supposed to be representing what is in the community. And that's what we're trying to talk about here. We should understand why we're looking different, how we behave different, because we are coming from our community. And in our community, there are all sorts of things. And they're having a study. And they keep changing. So groups are changing out there. So that's why we are who we are in our company, because we represent this community. Not necessarily one-on-one representing, because we are kind of different here. If you look around, 1, 2, 3, 4 boys in a group that we have here, or men or males in this group that is in a high company level. So it's not going to be like the 50-50 we're talking about in the community. So we are mostly an older population, okay? And in the community, we are more females than males. So sort of kind of we are out there, a little bit askew for the male-female majority that we have here. Now, when we go to the race, so we look at Marin County based on our race, we can see how we are different from what is outside. What we talk about, we're going to call it white. Well, they call it white alone, but I call it white. Is a person that is defined themselves as having origins from Europe, Middle East, North Africa, Irish, German, Italian, Lebanese, Arab, all of those. That population in this county is 82.2%. It goes down to 70.6% if we bring it just this other category. So between 70 and 80. 13.4 are African American, and more or less the same proportion of Hispanic, 13.2. So this is what is out in the community. In this specific community, ideally, our company should be reflecting this, and that's what we're looking for. So 26% of our company, more or less, will be non-white people. This is what Marin County looks like when we compare this with Miami-Dade. So that's when I entered the United States. I thought I had made it because I was in Miami. Guess what? That's too low south to represent the rest of the US. So I was in a different place. Look at this. People from 65 and over, Marin County, 28.6, 16% in Miami-Dade County. That represents, when we talk about advanced age, we're expecting something between 90 and above. Because the closer we get to that 65, the younger they're going to be looking like. But in Miami-Dade, it's only 16% of that population. So their community should be prepared for different things. They had to work more in children's health, more in maternal health, more in a young population, and we had to get prepared for more into the elderly portion of the population. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but I have never seen so many nursing homes per square meters like here in the Marion County. That doesn't happen anywhere else. And if we look at this, I had one English-speaking patient in my clinics while I did 6 years of residency, and the rest of them were Spanish-speaking. Look at this, Miami, 68.6 describe themselves as Latinos, when 13.2 they're describing themselves as Latino in Marion County. So it's a difference of population. So when I moved from Miami to Boca, they were laughing at me because I will not speak Spanish anymore. Little they knew that I was moving to Ocala. When I moved to Ocala 14 years ago, there was one single restaurant that you could find sort of kind of a Hispanic food. It was in 484, still open, but there was only place to eat Hispanic food when we moved here. But 14 years have passed and we are changing. Now I did a case study just for the QI people in the room. I pulled one of the teams that are actually out there. This is employee data. So HR provided me with this information, and I pulled one team. That team is taking care of an area in this county where most of the Hispanic population is known to live. So that team is supposed to be representing that community to be able to meet the needs, culturally based needs of those people. So we look at this. There's one person in there that is described as Hispanic. When I just said that in that population will be 13% or more because there are more clump in that area. There are 3 African American or Black African Americans in that team, and the rest of them are white. Okay? So that may be good, that may be bad, but this is what we have. So what we do with these cases is we had to adapt. So this team usually is renting, hiring, or borrowing a nurse from another team to deal with this population when we had these kind of patients. Because this is what it shows. The population says that we have 13.2% of Latinos, and this team only has 6.25. The African American, it's just right there, it's same thing. Very different, 13.4 to 18.4, more or less the same difference in here. And the whites are still there. So we have to identify that that team is going to have difficulties to understand that culture because they don't have that background that available. And if the numbers are wrong, it's Andy's fault because he didn't help me enough in that calculation. So I saw you pulling that cell phone. So if we have difficulties to understand that culture when the patient is dying, is when we are more sensitive to anything that we have brought with us. So when we are uncomfortable, we are sick, when we're in pain, is when don't get close to me speaking English, we're going to have a hard time understanding you. And I'm going to be requiring some more care different than the other ones, okay? So that's why this team is going to have to adapt their providers to be able to provide care in that specific population. The same team, this is their current for 2 days ago, this is the current patient population broken down by group, ethnic groups. So we talk about this group has 89 patients, 7.8, 13.2. This is what we're talking about the patient population in there. 5 African American, 77, and 1 Asian. We didn't have anybody with that background in that group. Okay? And there's an Asian ethnicity patient in this town that we're taking care of this team. And we may have to be more open to use the language line. We may have more open to ask them what kind of diet they actually use. If Mike is going to have to be cooking their meal when they go to die in hospice house, because it's important for that person to have an excellent death. And that, again, is all what we are here about. So when we decide to start talking about this, it's because it was kind of an uncomfortable feeling out there. We had identified that something was happening, that we were not able to meet the needs, not only for the external client, but also for the internal client. So this is a conversation that needs to happen. There's a lot of companies that have been doing this as a training where you're supposed to be sitting down in a place and talk about it for 8 hours straight, and everybody gets very bored and they get upset about doing it. We want to do it something differently. We want to initiate a conversation. We want to know where you're coming from, how you do things, so we can do best, what is best of all of us. So that's what we're talking about. So the M&Ms is just one of the good things that are going to happen from this training. Just remember, in a little bag, we are all together, despite the fact that we all come in different colors. We all taste the same. Some of them kind of a little bit broken, and the shell a little bit broken, but still the same chocolate. We need to retain the talent, because if I don't feel comfortable here, I will look for a new job. So we need to keep that talent here, and we're going to continue to be more competent in the job that we're doing. And we're going to be opening new markets, and we're going to provide better care. Do you know this author? Mary Josefina Lozada Bellorin. I think, and I believe, that we need to have a conversation about our differences so we can establish our similarities. If I don't know Kim, I didn't know that she was married to a Puerto Rican guy, so when I start cursing in Spanish in front of her, she's going to get it. Okay? So I had to be aware of those things to be able to manage in the proper manner when I'm in this executive office. Just there. So diversity matters in the corporate world because it's the ability of the organization to adapt to a fast changing. I just showed you one Asian patient in that team. Okay? So if we prepare the same information for next year, it may be more than that, because this is going to continue to change, and we need to be prepared for that. Because we have to approach new outlook and perspectives, experiences, culture, gender, age, because it's going to improve our financial competency. If I go out there and tell, I do this job much better than anybody else because I can't understand anybody else who provided the excellent care they're looking for, I have no competition. And that's how I do it. I go outside and say, Hospice of Marion County is the best hospice care that exists in Marion County. And I make sure of that. And it's just good in terms of business. I can attract and retain different workforce because I can tell my friends and say, come over. Here we have, all the time we have a lot of fun. We are talking about who we are, how we do things, and we still enjoy ourselves. And when we are not enjoying ourselves, we work with our differences and we try to solve the problem. We anticipate and satisfy the customer needs internally and externally. And we can come with creative solutions. So Mr. Prem Singh, who works in a global HR company that makes a lot of millions out there, because apparently this talk is about HR and they dump this on me. Great teams are built on differences, no similarities. So when we talk about including and being inclusive and talking about inclusion, is that we identify those similarities just with the purpose of including them in the end product of what we're doing. What happens is that we always have a better way of doing things, and sometimes we think that's the best way of doing it. And that's where the biases come around. So bias is no more than our brain being lazy, and instead of processing the information, want to do it immediately. So when I hear a word with a different accent, I may disagree with that. I may play that. I don't understand that. So what did you say again? I cannot hear you. Don't understand who you are. So why are you talking English that way? Okay? That doesn't mean that you're better than me. It just means that mine is different than yours. So don't make me feel worse because I have 4 languages in my brain and you only have 1, and I have 4 different accents and you only have 1. Okay? Because that's what it is. So if we have brought that programming with us and we try to explain our world with them, we may be absolutely wrong. So we have to be open to different opinions to come up with a better understanding of our current world. It happens all the time when doctors are talking to patients. We go there and we tell them, your EKG is abnormal, your creatinine has been elevated, and we're probably going to have to do something with your GCS or GSS, GSC. That was English to the best of my knowledge or the best of my ability. If I tell that to the patient, it doesn't make sense, but that's how doctors talk. So just the fact that I think I'm doing my best and you have to go along with that because I say so, is going to create a complete broken communication in there that is going to impact the way we do things. So when we judge that other culture and we assume that where I'm coming from is better than where you're coming from, that's when we're going to have difficulties and we're not going to be able to pull this chariot together. We talk about all millennials be spoiled rats. We talk about all veterans have PTSD, so that's why I don't offer the veteran pinning because he's a Vietnam veteran and all of them are ashamed of being a veteran. That's not true. But that's a fear, that's an assessment, that's your framework. You cannot assume that until you talk to the patient. And apparently all women are bad drivers. That's what is in the movies, okay? I have 2 car accidents in more than 30 years of driving. And I don't tell Kim, but I rush all the time. We can reject an applicant just because their gender, their build, their height, the color of their skin, the smell of their breath, all sort of things. We can assume about a role just because of any of those characteristics. I walk into the patient's room with my 2 medical students, and when we say, we are the doctors, I'm going to come and talk to you. I am Dr. Lozada. This is Mr. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so. When the patient starts talking back to the doctor, is talking to the male medical student that is in the room, because in their framework, there's no way that a female can be their doctor. And I've been fighting for that for the past gazillion years. But then when they're going to look for a primary care physician, they will look for the list that is a female to take care of them. The good thing is the biases are easily removed if we understand where we're coming from. So we understand the basis of your behavior, we can modify behavior. All it takes is a little bit of sensitivity and sensitization, so that bias is no longer relevant. If Andy comes to me and tells me that I'm going to be eating bison, that's what we ate the other day, or deer? What did we eat the other day with the Andy made? Deer? Okay. If I have never tried deer and I only know Bambi, okay, I would say, are you out of your mind? How did you kill a deer? But I've been eating deer since I was a little one because we used to do that there also from my framework. And I never had it in the way he prepared it, but it was as good as anything else. And I don't think he's a bad person, but he killed Bambi. In the place where I'm coming from, blondes are hot shots. So if you want to be up in the top, you color your hair blonde no matter what your skin color looks like. Here, blondes considered to be stupid or dumb or not that smart. Where that changed when I crossed the Caribbean Sea, I have no idea where that changed, but apparently that's what the perception is out there. So in my house, I am very brunette, and I get kind of reddish highlight. My daughter is extremely blonde. So we always make fun out of that. We cannot assume that every single job is going to be done by this specific type of person or this specific gender, because it's not going to apply for all of that. So when that happens, you're going to have to accept that. I have one for the age. You remember Dr. Elgerman? When Dr. Elgerman came to start working with us, he had just finished med school. He had just become a doctor and then did his residency. So 3 years after he's been finished med school, we sent him out to see a patient at her house, and she refused to open the door to him because until he will show his driver's license, because she could not believe that he was a doctor, B, an internal medicine doctor, because he was so young. And she asked him, because she told me that, I asked him if his mother knew that he was driving around. So apparently if I send Dr. Elliott out, it will be easier to understand, okay? Things like, when we develop policies, procedures with all of this, we bring our biases to that. So that's why we have a committee doing those things. But still, if we have a committee with all girls in there, the only shoes we're going to be describing in our policies are female shoes. We're not going to talk about what is the characteristic or requirements of the male shoes, because in our population probably it's like a 10% of requirement. So we talk about the high of the heels, the peeping toes, the open toes, and all of that in our policy, but we don't talk about Mike having to wear specific shoes when he's in the kitchen because he's going to have a different shoes than Jay here in the office that he's doing something different. It's not part of our frame. So this, we keep seeing this more and more commonly. I was just in the hospital, they're redoing the hospital, and in each group that work in each floor, there are at least 2 women doing construction work. And I'm proud of it and glad for that. This guy here is portrayed as the boss. That should not bother us or should not surprise us that an African American is the boss of a whitey white. Okay? Because that is absolutely okay. So we need to identify and celebrate new role models. People that work flexible, women coming back after their break. Some people that have an empty space in the resume has a difficult time saying, I was out of my work for 3 years taking care of my child, and now I'm ready to come back to work. So when you put that as an excuse not to be working, some people say, oh no, she was out of work for such a long time that there's no way to to hire that person. So if we go over all these details when we're hiring people, we may identify our biases when we're doing the selection of those people and then make a much better informed decision about that. We should be more aware of the stereotypes. IT guys are supposed to be geeks. I'm not supposed to know anything about ITI. So when I call Andy and ask him about a computer and I hear, because the doctor is daring to ask him a question about computer, if he makes me feel dumb because he knows IT and I don't, I'm going to call him and say, what is your creatinine level today? And I say, what? Okay? That's all I know, and that's all he knows. That doesn't mean that what he knows is better than me, than what I know. It just means that two completely different universes that collide when my computer crashes. So the 2 people that I got this information from were these 2 females. Sorry, that I get these 2 females. One of them decided that after she was a doctor, start working in this field of HR, inclusion, and diversity, because she was not really appreciated in her world because she was a female. I just decided I was not appreciated, so I keep fighting. So when my daughter said that she was going to become a doctor, I said, oh, God. Diversity and inclusion dynamics may be positive or negative, okay? I may want to learn how Mike makes his cheesecake or macaroni and cheese, and he may want to come and learn how I make my ropa vieja. So that's how we can make that reaction when I open my container and it smells so good. He said, what is that? So I can teach you how to do that. So we can have diversity moment with a lot of food, which brings me to the point we're going to have a food fair, contest, gathering, and each one of us is going to bring the food that makes us comfortable or we like for where our framework is coming from, or we want you to know. So each one of us can bring something and we can share and explain to each other where we're coming from. So we can avoid a cross-cultural misunderstanding that may occur when we open the lunch bag. There are vignettes. This guy wants to go to the company picnic with his couple, who is another guy. But his co-worker walks in and starts talking about her not being approving of same-sex relationship. And he tried to get through her, and she didn't get it. So at the end, he decided he cannot participate of that picnic because he doesn't want to put his partner or his couple into that uncomfortable situation. Okay? It's not that we're not going to express our ideas, it's that we have to be respecting the other's ideas and where they're coming from. Same thing with this. If we're going for the hurricane season and we decide that Mike is going to be holding this building because he has no children, we didn't ask Mike who he's taking care of at home. The matter that he doesn't have officially a child that he knows of, or he's not taking care of a child now, doesn't mean that he doesn't have 10 dogs, 20 chicken, a father, a mother, a neighbor that he needs to go and take care of. So not only females are in the caregiver role out there, and we cannot assume that the person is going to take the longest ride, the longest shift, the latest one, the holiday, because that is unfair. So some of these biases can be very obvious. Some other biases can be a little bit more subtle. If you feel comfortable with what communication you're having with each other, that's absolutely fine. But if you feel something is uncomfortable, we better talk about it. Because that level of discomfort may build up with time and may interrupt the work that we're doing. We all have stereotypes, so that's going to be showing in our judgment, or in our language, and our actions. This Asian patient that I showed you about, when I try to pull the information like the doctor will do, going each by patient, instead of going to IT and ask them to do it with a computer, when I pull that information like that, the Asian patient look in my Latino group because they have a first and last name Hispanic. But while that patient is from Filipina, which very much 80% of the population had a Hispanic first and second and last name, because there used to be a Hispanic colony. So not until the computer came and pulled the ethnicity as the person has identified it, we know that there's an Asian patient in that group. So we cannot assume. It's very good if we come in for a framework, so we may have a prediction. But if that prediction doesn't match what we're expecting, we should not be disappointed. Because not all the groups are in the same way. Not all of the groups are going to be meeting my criteria, and I have to adapt to the group. So that's why we continue to explore our differences and encourage respect in that relationships.